Disappearance of Emmanuela Orlandi. Since her last sighting on June 22, 1983, following a music class in Rome, 15-year-old Emmanuela Orlandi, the daughter of a Vatican official, has remained missing. In the theories surrounding Orlandi's disappearance, amateur investigators have accused various individuals and groups of being responsible for her disappearance, and despite the fact that the case has never been resolved and she has never even been located, disturbing new evidence has brought the case back to light. For the first time in over 35 years, a promising 2019 lead involving bones found in Vatican City that were thought to be hers appeared to be leading authorities in the right path, but investigators' hopes were soon crushed once more. Even now, the mystery surrounding Emmanuela Orlandi's disappearance is still unsolved and unsettling. Although they lived in a small, close-knit neighborhood where their father was a powerful figure, Emmanuela Orlandi's brother Pietro claimed that they had a Vatican upbringing and that they felt safest in the world. However, on June 22, 1983, their home turf proved to be anything but safe. She was studying the flute 3 days a week at a nearby music school, and that's exactly what she was doing the day she disappeared. She arrived in class and spoke with her sister afterwards, but she never returned home. Her last known communication with anyone was that phone call to her sister. The following day, Emmanuela Orlandi was formally declared missing, and as soon as any tips came in, the inquiry was launched. Particularly, 2 tips, one from June 25th and another from June 28th, seemed to point investigators in the right direction. Referring to himself as Pierluigi, the first caller claimed to have seen Orlandi that day in Rome, and even gave specifics about her attire and flute that led detectives to conclude he was telling the truth. He continued by saying that Orlandi had told her sister that the girl, who was going by the name Barbarella, had fled from home in order to sell Avon goods. On June 28th, the second caller reported to the police that he had also met a young woman who had run away from home and went by the name Barbara. This man's account of seeing her at a pub close to the music school seems plausible. However, subsequent informants began discussing a plot involving the Grey Wolves, a Turkish organization who was planning to take Emmanuela Orlandi and then trade her for one of their own assassins who had been imprisoned for firing at the Pope 2 years prior. To explain what transpired, several explanations have been proposed. Considering the Vatican and its surroundings are a center of mafia and religious influence, those organizations are frequently viewed with distrust. The Banda della Magliana, a criminal organization with headquarters in Rome and commanded by Enrico de Pedis, is at the center of most mafia hypotheses. According to the notion, the syndicate determined that holding the daughter of a Vatican official hostage would be the best method to recover the vast sums of money they had borrowed to the Vatican Bank, but were not receiving in return. This theory has been bolstered by anonymous information to the authorities, and de Pedis' ex-girlfriend later went public with her accusation that he told her he had taken Orlandi. However, hard evidence is scant, and a police check of the gangster's grave, which one tipster had suggested might yield DNA evidence supporting the hypothesis, produced no results. There appears to be more evidence supporting the Grey Wolves idea. On May 13, 1981, Grey Wolf Mehmet Ali Aga attempted to take out Pope John Paul II in the Vatican by firing at him 4 times, but was apprehended right away. In the weeks after Orlandi vanished, a number of anonymous calls to the authorities raised the possibility that Orlandi was being held by Turkish militants with the intention of trading her for Aga. One scenario regarding the Orlandi case, and possibly the most unsettling claim, is that Emmanuela Orlandi and other girls were taken by the Vatican. According to the Telegraph, the hypothesis goes on to say that these parties included foreign ambassadors as well. The accusation can't be completely discounted, though, because the source of it was Father Gabriele Amorth, the senior exorcist for the Vatican, and a man personally nominated by John Paul II. In an attempt to eventually solve this mystery, officials have pursued numerous leads and responded to a large number of tips in the nearly 40 years since Emmanuela Orlandi vanished. Maybe the most thrilling tip of all was the 2019 letter that purported to indicate her final resting location. Early in the year, Laura Scrow, the attorney for the Orlandi family, got a very sinister note that included a picture of a tomb under the Vatican and instructions to look where the angel is pointing, referring to the marble angel that was watching over the crypt in question. The Vatican's top officials took notice of the anonymous tip, and spokesman Alessandro Gisotti intervened to handle the matter delicately. The fact that scientific examinations conducted on the tomb after the letter was sent indicated that it had been opened at least once recently enough for Orlandi's bones to have been hidden within, is what made this tip so intriguing. Scrow added that she had been able to verify that some people knew there was a chance Emmanuela Orlandi had been hidden in the tomb in a letter to the Vatican. The fact that flowers had been left at the tomb site provided even more proof that anonymous individuals had been paying visits. Now, it was just a matter of searching the crypt to see if Emmanuela Orlandi's remains were indeed within. The Orlandi family had previously had their hopes raised by an anonymous tip before the angel letter became public in 2019. The family most recently held its breath in unison when the Vatican found human remains on its grounds on October 2018, only to be disappointed to learn that the remains belonged to unrelated individuals. Regretfully, this occurred once more in July 2019 when no remains were found during the tomb search. Alessandro Gisotti, a spokesman for the Vatican, stated that the entrance to the tomb opened onto a large subterranean area that was completely empty and had no human remains. It was devastating news for the Orlandi family, who had spent nearly 40 years patiently and devotedly looking for the lost girl's remains. Pietro Orlandi, the brother, stated that he was relieved that Emmanuela was not there. He also mentioned that his family has become accustomed to the illusions and disillusions associated with this pointless pursuit. Even so, it is nevertheless notable that the Vatican abruptly changed their mind about cooperating in this case, even if nothing was discovered. Pietro Orlandi claimed that after pleading with the Vatican several times to help with his sister's disappearance, he was positively surprised when they eventually acceded. It was suggested by Pietro Orlandi that the Vatican's denial of assistance amounted to an admission that there is a possibility of internal responsibility on their part. However, despite the Vatican's assistance, the case of Emmanuela Orlandi's disappearance remains unsolved. The Mysterious Beast of Gan. In the rugged and remote wilderness of 18th century France, a shadowy figure stalked the countryside, striking fear into the hearts of villagers and leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. Known as the Beast of Gan, this mysterious creature became the stuff of legend, captivating the imagination of the populace and inspiring a frantic hunt to rid the land of its terrifying presence. Yet, despite the efforts of hunters and soldiers, the true identity and nature of the beast remain shrouded in mystery, leaving behind a legacy of fear and fascination that endures to this day. A fearsome creature made rural areas of central France its hunting grounds between 1764 and 1767. The Beast of Gan, who frightened the entire nation for 3 years by claiming the lives of both sheep and children, managed to escape from steel jaw traps and beats. On June 13, 1764, the panic started. A 14-year-old girl from the Ardèche village of Les Hubach was eaten by a ferocious beast on that exact day. There have been previous reports of wolf attacks in the Gévaudan, a large area of undulating hills and verdant plains that is home to 20,000 Canis lupus, no less. But after that day, attacks on young cowherds or the daughters of shepherds were frequent. Fearful whispers began to circulate, attributing the cause to a hideous being, far larger than any other wolf, possessing lion's paws, horns, and enormous fangs. A hyena, a bear, a panther, or even a supernatural being was what several witnesses thought the object was, instead of a wolf. People still believed in werewolves, vampires, and ghosts at the time. Fearing for their lives, parishioners sought safety in nearby churches, where clergy prayed for God's pardon and advised them to reflect on their transgressions. Meanwhile, the toll among the impoverished children from the abandoned valleys increased gradually as the number of casualties increased. Urban stories and myths about the beast quickly emerged in the region, which had just seen plagues, hunger, and the devastation of the 7 Years' War. It was thought that the Gévaudan were likely cursed. Initially, the peasants reacted by keeping their boys and girls indoors till later. With the beast on the loose, it was no longer safe for kids to go on their own adventures. Their parents carried pitchforks, pikes, and rods as they wandered the countryside in groups. Some prayed for hours on end while on their knees. However, the most effective response was presumably provided by the municipal government, who in late 1764 authorized the installation of beats and traps. By winter 1764, the first soldiers appointed by the king, a group of mounted infantrymen known as dragoons, had arrived in the area at the request of the intendant of Languedoc. Unfortunately, they were unable to function properly due to the thick amounts of snow. They started hunting again in early 1765, but their efforts eventually proved fruitless since the beast was always able to get past their nets and traps. The wolf's appetite seemed unabated, and it became more brazen. It attacked 7 Villeret youngsters, ages 8 to 12, on January 12th. Nevertheless, the children overcame all obstacles to force the beast to flee, while the adults were unable to. A royal scholarship subsequently helped one of the youngsters participating in that valiant deed, and he went on to become a lieutenant in the Royal Artillery Corps. It even infuriated King Louis XV himself. If someone could bring him the creature's head, he would reward them with £6,000, the equivalent to £433,000 or $512,000. The best wolf catchers in the nation grabbed their weapons and silver bullets and headed towards the monster-infested forests of Gévaudan, but they were once more unsuccessful, and while the negative news was causing unease and fear throughout the region, phony reports mocking French incompetence were published in British publications. The legendary hunter François Antoine, the king's designated gun-bearer, was the only person who appeared to be able to put an end to the creature's terrifying reign. The reputation of Antoine was fierce. As soon as he arrived in Gévaudan in June 1765, he studied maps and tracked footsteps. After weeks of relentless beats, on September 21st, his squad took out a large animal. The creature measured 3 feet in height, 6 feet in length, and 140 pounds in weight. The embalmed body was sent for Louis to view, and Antoine was overjoyed and confident that he had defeated the notorious Gévaudan monster. Regretfully, the subsequent days validated his assertion. 3 weeks later, attacks returned with increased ferocity. In the aftermath of the beast's demise, speculation about its true nature and origins continued to swirl, with theories ranging from the plausible to the outlandish. Some believed it to be a lone wolf or pack of wolves, driven to desperation by hunger and habitat loss, while others speculated that it may have been a rare and undiscovered species of predator native to the region. Yet, despite the countless theories and conjectures put forth over the years, the true identity of the beast of Gévaudan remains a mystery, lost to the mists of time and the fog of legend. An ancient encounter with extraterrestrial technology. In the annals of ancient texts, the Book of Ezekiel stands out as a testament to the mysteries of the divine and the unexplained. Among its many strange passages, one in particular has captured the imagination of scholars and believers alike. Ezekiel's vision of a wheel within a wheel, described in vivid detail in the first chapter of the book. While traditionally interpreted as a divine vision, some have speculated that Ezekiel's encounter may have been an early account of a UFO sighting, offering tantalizing clues to the possibility of extraterrestrial contact in antiquity. The passage in question describes a remarkable vision experienced by the prophet Ezekiel while he was in exile in Babylon. In it, Ezekiel describes seeing a whirlwind approaching from the north, followed by a great cloud with fire flashing forth continually and a brightness around it. Within the cloud, Ezekiel sees 4 living creatures, each with 4 faces and 4 wings, and beside them, a wheel that sparkled like beryl. As Ezekiel continues to describe the scene, he provides intricate details of the wheel's appearance and movement, noting that it had a wheel within a wheel and that its rims were full of eyes all around. He describes how the creatures moved in perfect synchrony with the wheels, their movements resembling that of lightning flashing back and forth. The description is so vivid and detailed that it has led many to speculate about its possible origins and meaning. One interpretation that has gained traction in recent years is the idea that Ezekiel's vision may have been an early encounter with advanced extraterrestrial technology. Proponents of this theory point to the striking similarities between Ezekiel's description of the wheel and modern depictions of UFOs, noting the wheel-like shape, the presence of lights or eyes around the rim, and the description of the beings associated with it. Furthermore, the idea that the wheel had a wheel within a wheel has led some to speculate that Ezekiel may have been describing a form of propulsion system similar to what we would associate with a spacecraft. The presence of the living creatures and their seemingly coordinated movements also suggests a level of intelligence and intentionality that is difficult to explain within a purely terrestrial context. Supporters of the extraterrestrial interpretation also point to other passages in the Bible that they believe may describe similar encounters with advanced beings or technology. While the extraterrestrial interpretation of Ezekiel's vision remains controversial and speculative, it offers a fascinating glimpse into the intersection of ancient religious texts and modern research. It challenges us to reconsider our understanding of the past and the possibility that ancient peoples may have had encounters with beings or technologies beyond their comprehension. The Aurora, Texas UFO incident. Aurora, Texas, saw a mysterious UFO scream out of the sky in April 1897. It blew up into flames when it struck a windmill on Judge J.S. Proctor's property. Numerous local residents would be present to see the incident, and could confirm that the craft was destroyed, as well as that the pilot was an extraterrestrial. The Dallas Morning News published a report on the incident on April 19th. It has been reported that the funeral did in fact occur. Additionally, the pilot's burial in the Aurora Cemetery was identified with a straightforward headstone. It stayed there for more than 70 years, until Bill Case, a journalist for the Dallas Times-Herald, became interested in the story and started looking into it. He said he had found the burial. In addition, test results indicated the presence of a little coffin beneath the surface of the soil. However, the gravestone had inexplicably disappeared by the time Case started the process of excavating the burial. He would find the marker's location, but the grave itself disappeared, and there was nothing left to examine. Case didn't take long to place the blame for this squarely at the feet of the US government. The mysterious London monster. 100 years before Jack the Ripper, there were reports of the London monster, and researchers have suggested that this individual would inspire Jack the Ripper. In the late 18th century, the streets of London were gripped by fear as rumours spread of a mysterious assailant terrorising the city's populace. Dubbed the London Monster, this shadowy figure was said to lurk in the shadows, targeting unsuspecting victims with a series of bizarre attacks. From whispered rumours to sensationalised newspaper reports, the legend of the London Monster captured the imagination of Londoners and sparked widespread panic as authorities struggled to apprehend the perpetrator and bring an end to the reign of terror. The first documented attack attributed to the London Monster occurred in 1788, when a woman named Anne Porter reported being attacked by a man wielding a sharp instrument in the vicinity of Drury Lane. According to Porter's account, the assailant had approached her from behind and impaled her before fleeing into the night, leaving her injured and traumatized by the sudden and inexplicable attack. News of the incident spread quickly, sending shockwaves through the community and raising fears of a potential attacker on the loose. In the months that followed, reports of similar incidents began to surface across the city, with individuals describing encounters with a mysterious figure who would approach them on the street before launching a sudden and unprovoked attack. The attacks were characterized by their randomness, with individuals suffering injuries ranging from minor cuts and bruises to more serious wounds requiring medical attention. Despite efforts by the authorities to track down the individual, the London Monster continued to elude capture, leaving a trail of fear and uncertainty in his wake. As panic swept through the streets of London, the public became increasingly obsessed with uncovering the identity of the elusive individual and putting an end to the spate of attacks plaguing the city. Speculation ran rampant, with theories ranging from the supernatural to the political, as Londoners struggled to make sense of the seemingly inexplicable attacks. Some believed the London Monster to be a deranged individual acting out of sheer malice, while others speculated that he may have been motivated by political grievances or personal vendettas. The sensationalized nature of the attacks only served to fuel the hysteria, as newspapers seized upon the story, publishing lurid accounts of the monster's exploits and stoking public fears with sensational headlines and graphic illustrations. In an era before the advent of forensic science and criminal profiling, the hunt for the London monster relied largely on eyewitness testimony and circumstantial evidence, making it difficult for authorities to discern fact from fiction amidst the frenzy of speculation and rumour. Despite the best efforts of the authorities, the identity of the London monster remained a mystery, with no conclusive evidence ever being found to link any specific individual to the attacks. In the absence of a suspect, the public's imagination ran wild, with theories ranging from the plausible to the outlandish as Londoners grappled with the uncertainty and fear surrounding the elusive assailant. In the end, the London monster was never caught, and the attacks eventually ceased as suddenly as they had begun, leaving behind a legacy of fear and intrigue that continues to captivate the imagination of historians and true crime enthusiasts to this day. While the true identity of the monster may never be known, the legend of his reign of terror lives on as a cautionary tale of the dark and shadowy side of urban life in 18th century London. Great Amherst Mystery. The modest Nova Scotian town of Amherst became well known worldwide in the autumn of 1878 as a result of a string of unexplained paranormal occurrences that would later be dubbed the Great Amherst Mystery. When the bizarre event started, 18-year-old Esther Cox was residing on Princess Street in Amherst with her sister, Olive Teed, and Olive's little family. Sharing a bed with her younger sister Jenny, Esther was startled out of a sleep one night by something she initially believed to be a rodent under the mattress. They returned to sleep after discovering nothing in the bed, but every night the situation got worse. Before long, unusual banging and noises could be heard throughout the house, and objects were flying through the air. When Esther woke up, she was twice her normal size and moaning in agony. She was scraped and jabbed with needles by Esther's ghosts. Many observed fires being ignited and an unidentified hand making scratches in the wall over her bed. Numerous Amherst locals saw these events, and articles about them quickly appeared in newspapers around North America. After learning about the tale from a theatrical tour of Eastern Canada, Walter Hubbell, an American actor interested in disproving paranormal claims, made plans to stay with Esther and her family in March 1879. Hubbell recorded all of Esther's experiences after coming to believe that her account was true. He organized a tour through New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, telling her story while she sat on stage, her audience members holding out hope that her ghosts would materialize. The pair's tour came to an abrupt end when one very boisterous group chased them out of town after the spirits failed to materialize. But that July, Hubbell released his version of Esther's tale, which went on to sell 55,000 copies. Esther was plagued by paranormal powers, even after the novel became well known. Eventually, she was evicted from the Teed home and placed on the farm of a family outside of Amherst. She was accused of arson and given a 4-month jail sentence after claiming that her ghosts destroyed the family's barn. She went to see a First Nations medicine man after being freed, and he exorcised her demons. She refused to discuss the paranormal experiences she encountered for the remainder of her life. After 2 marriages, she moved to Brockton, Massachusetts, where she passed away on November 8, 1912, at the age of 52. Much of the story's popularity in paranormal circles can be attributed to Hubbell's book. Published nearly 150 years ago, it has never been out of print. A testamentary documentary attested to the veracity of the narrative by several Amherst residents was inserted in later editions. In the aftermath of the events in Amherst, numerous theories were put forth to explain the phenomena, ranging from the plausible to the outlandish. Some suggested that the disturbances may have been caused by natural phenomena such as seismic activity or electromagnetic disturbances, while others speculated that Esther may have been a medium or channel for supernatural forces beyond her control. Despite the countless theories and conjectures put forth over the years, the true nature of the Great Amherst Mystery remains elusive, lost to the passage of time and the fog of legend. The Lake Anjikuni Disappearance. Lake Anjikuni in Canada's extreme north can be a harsh environment. The lake, which is half covered in snow and ice throughout the year, is a part of a network of waterways that the Inuit people in the area used for commerce and fishing to support their settlements. The Inuit lived in a number of settlements along the lake shores, which served as both a welcoming retreat for fur trappers and a staging area for their daring journeys far north to pursue caribou and beaver. However, around 1930, something happened to one of the settlements that is still unknown. In 1930, a news reporter from the Pass, Manitoba, wrote about a tiny Inuit settlement near Lake Anjikuni. As a well-known fur trapper in the town, Joe LaBelle stopped at the settlement while traveling through the area and found that everyone had departed. According to the narrative, Joe LaBelle found an abandoned camp with 6 tents, but no trace of the 25 men, women, and children who had been there. Numerous versions of this tale have been told, and a wide range of theories, from the implausible to the absurd, have been proposed to account for the disappearances. On a chilly November day in 1930, Canadian fur trapper Joe LaBelle was meandering around Anjikuni Lake in the Northwest Territories. After hearing about an Inuit settlement nearby, he went to the village to look for a place to stay, only to discover it completely abandoned. The villagers were totally unprepared for whatever had occurred. He found food draped over fire pits and partially finished clothing with needles still in them throughout his search, but he found no signs of violence or strife that would have explained the people's absence. LaBelle discovered 7 sled dogs still attached to their posts as she passed through the village. They had all perished from starvation. It would have been virtually unimaginable to abandon these dogs, who would have been essential to the community's survival. However, LaBelle discovered something even more terrifying on the outskirts of the community. Someone had lately dug up a human burial. LaBelle realized it couldn't have been an animal because the stones surrounding the grave were intact. This had been done by a human. After alerting the Northwest Mounted Police, they began looking into the disappearances. However, the village's residents were never found again. It was as though they had disappeared. The lost Inuit boats would not have been battered by wave action if the lake had been frozen at the time, among other inconsistencies he pointed out in the original story. Even more strange details are added in later stories. 3 trappers who spotted a UFO in the area are mentioned in Nigel Blundell and Roger Bohr's book, World's Greatest UFO Mysteries, along with other claims like 1,000 people going missing and entire cemeteries full of excavated burials. The Inuit had been missing for almost 8 weeks before LaBelle's arrival, the police team later discovered, but they were never able to ascertain why the entire tribe had fled the area. In an even more peculiar turn of events, Royal Canadian Mounted Police investigators reported witnessing mysterious pulsating lights in the sky above Lake Anjikuni. Northern Canadian skylights are not uncommon. The search and rescue team found lights that were nothing like the breathtaking natural phenomenon they were used to seeing, despite the fact that the northern lights are a gorgeous sight that can be seen from even the most remote parts of the nation. The lights they saw pulsating and blue in the horizon were not the northern lights. Like the remainder of the enclosure, the lights were never explained, and no connection to the vanished inhabitants was ever made. Nonetheless, a number of researchers conjectured in the latter half of the 20th century that the villagers might have been the hapless targets of one of the biggest UFO encounters in recorded history. The premise is both fascinating and disturbing, even though the evidence for it is, at best, anecdotal. As of right now, the Lake Anjikuni disappearance stands as one of the most baffling and enduring mysteries in the annals of unsolved cases, defying rational explanation and confounding investigators for decades. Whether the result of foul play, supernatural intervention, or some other unknown force, the fate of the missing villagers remains a haunting reminder of the fragility of human life and the mysteries that lie hidden in the remote corners of the world. As long as the true fate of the villagers remains unknown, so too will the legend of the Lake Anjikuni disappearance continue to captivate and intrigue those who dare to delve into its strange depths. The mystery of ex-paratrooper Gilbert Gilman from Olympic National Park. On Saturday, June 24, 2006, Gilbert Mark Gilman, aged 47, took a quick stroll around Washington's Olympic National Park, but he never came back. Instead of taking a strenuous climb that day, he decided to take advantage of the opportunity to capture some photographs in the park by heading to the Staircase Rapid Loop Trail Start in the national park. He carried no knapsack, and he wore light clothing and shoes. After leaving his automobile at the Staircase Ranger Station and having a quick conversation with Park Ranger Sanny Lustig, Gilman vanished from sight. After a thorough 10-day search, Gil was nowhere to be found, Nothing in the region has turned up to support his disappearance in 17 years. Greying brown hair and brown eyes, Gilman stood at 5'7" and weighed between 155 and 165 pounds. On the day of the excursion to the Olympic National Park, he was dressed in a bright blue and green Hawaiian shirt, khaki pants or shorts, sandals and prescription sunglasses. He was a former paratrooper in the United States Army and a tough, smart guy. He got 2 Bronze Stars for his combat service with the 82nd Airborne and served in Panama, East Africa and Israel. Gil held degrees from the Solvay Business School in Brussels, Union College in New York, and the London School of Economics. He has held positions in counter-terrorism and counterintelligence while serving as a military interrogator in Iraq. He was proficient in Arabic, Russian and Chinese and spent a year working in Iraq as a civilian contractor. Prior to moving to Washington State in 2004 to oversee Sandy Matheson's congressional campaign, Gilbert was employed by the United Nations in New York. Sandy Matheson is the director of the state's Department of Retirement Systems. From April 2005, he served as Matheson's deputy director of the Retirement Systems Department, assisting her on state and federal pension matters. On June 24, 2006, Park Ranger Sanny Lustig noticed Gil with a camera but no backpack. Sanny stated that they went outside to see what was going on because they really hear the music playing in the car. Located in a lowland old-growth forest, the Staircase region of Olympic National Park is 30 minutes outside of Hoodsport. It serves as the starting point for the North Fork Skokomish River Trail, which is a lovely place for hiking, and for day hikers, the start of the Staircase Rapids Loop. It also houses a campground and a temporary ranger station. Walkers can stroll the 2-mile, largely level Staircase Rapid Loops Trail beneath the 300- and 400-year-old Douglas firs, western hemlocks, and western red cedars. The trail meanders through the forest, past ferns and mossy trees, as it follows the North Fork Skokomish River. A massive fallen cedar can be reached via a spur trail. Constructed in 2013, a suspension bridge spans the river, providing a view of the rapids. Since the new bridge was constructed much higher to accommodate the area's spring runoff, the original bridge washed out in 1998 due to excessive water. Hikers can continue to Flapjack Lakes on the North Fork Skokomish River Trail, which is about a 15-mile round-trip hike. The following day, Sunday, June 25, 2006, Gil was scheduled to go with Sandy Matheson to a meeting in Spokane, Washington, following his departure for the park. Upon his initial failure to meet Sandy as scheduled, Gilman was declared missing by the authorities. His 2005 Ford Thunderbird convertible was found near the Staircase Ranger Station, where Park Ranger Sanny Lustig last saw him on June 24, 2006, a few days after he was reported missing. There was no sign of Gilbert after 10 days of searching the Staircase region and surrounding trails and peaks, which include steep, rocky slopes, deep woodland, and the North Fork Skokomish River. They employed 62 searchers on the ground, tracking dogs, a plane and a helicopter fitted with forward-looking infrared heat-seeking technology, and tracking dogs. The formal search was cancelled, and he was deemed missing by the US Forest Service after 10 days of futile searching. His mother, Doris Gilman, said it was difficult to believe someone could simply vanish. Gil was formally pronounced deceased on August 27, 2015. According to Washington state law, if someone goes missing and is not heard from for at least 7 years, and their absence is not satisfactorily explained after diligent search or inquiry, they are assumed deceased. Doris Gilman petitioned Thurston County Superior Court in June 2015 to take on the role of official estate trustee, giving her the power to shut down the estate. Unless he got confused and continued on the North Fork Skokomish River Trail, getting lost on the short and well-marked Staircase Loop Trail is unlikely. The whole region was thoroughly examined. There have been other instances of people going missing during hikes in the Staircase area. 2 hikers who had been walking in the Staircase area in the 1980s were reported missing. They were never located. Over the ensuing years, a few speculations regarding Gilbert surfaced in a number of TV programs. Gilman led a mysterious life and had previously worked on top-secret military intelligence assignments. Gilman's mother thinks he might have chosen to join the US government as a spy and vanished as a result. The mystery of Brandon Lawson. In the middle of the night, on rural Route 277, Brandon Lawson ran out of gas. He then made a number of odd phone calls and vanished from sight. When Brandon Lawson disappeared in 2013, his family was in disarray and the authorities were left perplexed. His disappearance in Bronte, Texas, seemed to be the result of a completely contradictory series of events. He was a devoted father of 4, but on the evening of August 8, 2013, he lost it and stormed out of his home. When he ran out of petrol an hour later, he contacted the police, but when they showed up there, he fled. Lawson called his brother Kyle to beg him to bring some petrol in addition to the cops. But on August 9th, when Kyle got there shortly after 1 in the morning, Brandon Lawson wasn't there, and since then, nobody has seen him. Brandon Lawson was born in Fort Worth, Texas, on November 18, 1986, into a large family and seems to have a nice upbringing. His parents are Bradley and Kimberly Lawson. Along with his sister Brittany, he also spent a lot of time outside with his brothers Kyle and Billy. In addition to enjoying camping and fishing, he was eager to purchase a pickup truck. When Lawson approached sophomore Ladessa Lofton in high school as a junior, he requested her phone number. After becoming an irreversible pair, they went on to have 3 kids together. Lawson's former partner's child also had Lofton as a stepmother. When Lawson vanished, they had been together for 10 years. With a newborn infant at home and the pressure of working over 60 hours a week in the oil fields, Brandon Lawson turned to a potent central nervous system stimulant just before he vanished. In a Crawl Space podcast interview, Lawson's brother Kyle said that on August 7, 2013, Lawson called Kyle to ask if he knew where to get the substance. When Lawson finally got back to his family's Texas house on August 8th, he got into an argument with Lofton because he had not gone home that evening. Just before midnight, he stormed off in his pickup after their altercation. At 11:30 in the evening, Lawson had contacted his father to let him know he was heading home to Crowley, Texas. But Lawson never made it through the entire 3-hour drive because on August 9th at 12:30, he ran out of petrol on Route 277. In a panic, he called his brother Kyle, who was concerned that his brother Brandon was on something. When his brother questioned Lawson about his state of mind, he denied it. Kyle drove to Lawson's house with his wife and 4-year-old son in tow in order to get the petrol can that Lofton had left on the doorstep. Lawson frequently hung up after only a few sentences during the brothers' subsequent phone conversations. Lawson once admitted to Kyle that he was bleeding. Meanwhile, Lawson contacted 911 at 12:50 and informed the dispatcher that he wanted the cops since he wasn't alone. At 12:56, a passing trucker noticed Lawson's parked truck's tail end hanging over the white line of the road and reported it to the police. At around 1:10, as Kyle was pulling up to pick up Lawson, a policeman showed up to look over the abandoned car. Although neither Kyle nor the policeman could see him, Lawson assured Kyle that he was there and had witnessed his arrival. Kyle parked down the road and waited, figuring Lawson might be hiding from the cop, but Lawson was nowhere to be located, even after the policeman left. Since Lawson's voicemail was now receiving all of Kyle's calls, he departed to bring his family home. At first light, Kyle went back to the abandoned truck, but Lawson was nowhere to be found. A constable report said that the only indication that anyone was in that area was a location beneath a tree where it seemed someone sat down near to the roadway within sight of where Lawson's pickup broke down. When the Coke County Sheriff's Office towed Brandon Lawson's truck at 8 in the morning, they discovered that Lawson had an active warrant for stimulant offenses and had previously been arrested, which made them believe Kyle was aiding his brother in vanishing. After Kyle passed 2 polygraphs, the hunt for Lawson went on. Nothing was discovered despite the authorities using 6 cadaver dogs, planes and thermal imaging cameras to investigate the area. Lofton even employed a private detective who managed a group of 10 employees. Everyone involved believed that Lawson had only been paranoid, despite Kyle's claim that Lawson had told him Lofton had people from their neighborhood after him. On August 13, 2013, Brandon Lawson was formally reported missing. That same day, Texas Rangers carried out a helicopter search, and the day before, local police had already concluded that he was no longer in the county. In the end, his family set up a Facebook page to gather information and arrange for searches in the area where Lawson disappeared. Although Lawson had withdrawn from his personal pension account before going missing, which the police found out about, he was scheduled to begin a new job in a few days, and his family doesn't think he disappeared on purpose. Clothes that had been identified as belonging to Lawson were discovered on February 4, 2022, almost 10 years after he vanished. The findings of the DNA test that identified the remains as belonging to Brandon Lawson are still pending public release as of this writing. Even if the DNA matches Brandon Lawson, there are still a lot of unanswered concerns regarding the young father's mysterious disappearance. The mysterious disappearance of Mitchell Dale Staling. On June 9, 2013, 51-year-old Mitchell Dale Staling, his wife Denian, and his parents visited Colorado's Mesa Verde National Park. He claimed to have left at 4:30 in the afternoon after hiking to the Spruce Tree House ruin. The trail, which is less than a quarter of a mile long, links to the Spruce Tree Trail and Petroglyph Point Trail, a 2.5-mile loop with exposed cliffs. On that route, witnesses spoke with him after seeing him. However, he did not make it back to his family. An unidentified individual eventually found Dale's remains on September 17, 2020, 7 years after he was last seen, a few miles away from his last known location. As of right now, many researchers are confused about what transpired in the national park that day with Dale. Dale had always wanted to visit Colorado, so the Staling family packed up their camper trailer and headed west from their hometown of Goliad, Texas. Although Dale was not a particularly adventurous person, he did love taking walks in the neighborhood and spending hours tending to his garden. He enjoyed camping, so visiting Mesa Verde National Park for the day sounded like the ideal way to experience nature. Because of the difficult terrain and the fact that Denian was overweight and Dale's parents were elderly, they had originally simply intended to drive out to the lookout point and observe the spectacle from a distance. However, Dale Staling had to take a closer look because he was eager to observe Mesa Verde's splendor. At 4:08, the hike to the summit of the route should have taken about an hour, but it was already quite warm. The park's temperatures ranged from 90 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The environment was between 6,500 and 8,000 feet high, with mesa tops and deep gorges. Located in Montezuma County, Colorado, Mesa Verde National Park is an American national park and a World Heritage Site. The name Mesa Verde means green table in Spanish. Some of the best preserved ancestral Pueblo and archaeological sites in the United States are safeguarded by the park. President Theodore Roosevelt created Mesa Verde, the first national park of its sort, in 1906 to preserve the cultural heritage of the Puebloans, who had inhabited the region for more than 700 years. The park covers 52,000 acres, close to the American Southwest's Four Corners region. More than 5,000 sites, including 600 cliff houses, make it the largest archaeological preserve in the United States. The most famous buildings in the park include Cliff Palace, which is reputed to be the biggest cliff house in North America. Beginning around 7,500 BC, the Foothills Mountain Complex, a group of nomadic Paleo-Indians, lived seasonally on Mesa Verde. Subsequently, on and around the mesa, archaic people built semi-permanent rock shelters. The local archaic population gave rise to the basket maker civilization around 1000 BC, and by 750 AD, the basket maker culture had given rise to the ancestral Puebloans. They started building the enormous cliff homes that are the park's most well-known feature around the end of the 12th century. They left the region by 1285, at the end of a period of severe and protracted droughts that caused environmental and societal upheaval. They traveled south to places like Rio Chama, Pajarito Plateau, and Santa Fe in Arizona and New Mexico. He vanished that day, and his family promptly filed a missing persons report. The rangers initially encouraged his wife to give him a few more hours because they believed he had fallen off course. Betty Lawrence, the public information officer for the park, said that a person has never gone missing in the park for longer than a few hours. 2 hours after he set out on the Spruce Tree House walk, he did not return, prompting the launch of a rigorous 2-week search that at its height involved 60 searchers, 2 dog teams, helicopter surveillance and rope teams that rappelled down cliffs in the Chapin Mesa region. In the early days of the search, the K9 team expressed interest in the area. The Petroglyph Point Trail climbs to the mesa through steep, switchbacking parts that have stairs carved out of the rock, following a foundation of cliffs. It was a very hot day on the day he vanished, and although he was without water, he did have a cell phone. After he vanished, nobody received any pings or responses from it. According to phone records, he attempted to check his voicemail around 7 that evening. He was dressed in a brown t-shirt, tanned khaki shorts, calf-height white socks, brown walking boots, and a khaki Mesa Verde Museum Association baseball cap. He had some cigarettes and his money with him as well. Mesa Verde National Park Chief Ranger Jesse Farias stated that despite extensive searching, there have been no findings in the region. They said that they had sent a dog team back there in November to re-examine the area for remains, but they found nothing. No suspicion of foul play was expressed by the authorities. The park never closed the Staling case, and it is still actively searching for him. A ranger visiting the park would be aware of any evidence that could lead to Sterling's retrieval and would bear in mind that there is an undiscovered body there. According to Chief Ranger Farias, his wall still has notes regarding Dale Staling's disappearance, as well as a picture of him. Farias estimates that between 5 and 10 individuals go missing in the park each year, but the case of Dale Staling is particularly memorable to him. According to Farias, the park searched for Staling for months, calling in searches for up to 100 people at a time, scaling cliffs, and scouring in regions of the park that were off-limits to tourists. Numerous cliff sections in the park descend to the rock-filled Ute Mountain Reservation. According to Farias, it would be nearly hard to spot Staling from above or below a cliff if he dropped. The family has received case papers from the authorities, who also update them on any developments in the hunt. However, Denian believes that not enough was done by the rangers to look for her husband. Before reducing their efforts, she added, rangers looked for Staling for 2 days. A press release stated that there was insufficient proof for the cause. Denian's strong views are refuted by Farias, who claims that park rangers looked for Staling for almost 3 months, mostly in a reduced capacity, and kept track of his absence. He claimed that a 3 to 5 mile radius surrounding the trail where he was last seen has been covered by their searches, which are still ongoing. Despite her husband's advanced age, Mrs. Staling wanted the search to go beyond the little area because he was capable of covering more ground in a day than they had anticipated. However, nothing came of their efforts. Denian went back to the park 3 more times in 2014, hoping to meet her husband and find some closure, but each time she went back, nothing had changed. She thinks the park's misleading signage is what led her spouse astray. Since she was unable to follow the trail, she used the testimony of a family who had last seen her husband there to support her theory. On September 17, 2020, after searching for 7 years without finding anything, park law enforcement rangers discovered human remains at the national park with help from the National Park Service Investigative Services Branch and the Montezuma County Coroner's Office. The bones of Dale Staling were found in a secluded area of Mesa Verde National Park, west of Durango, according to Park Superintendent Cliff Spencer. Although the tip did not give a precise position, search teams were able to determine its approximate area based on its descriptions. About 4 miles from Sterling's last known location, according to Spencer, Sterling was discovered. When he vanished in 2013, searchers spent roughly 2 hours getting to the scene. Due to materials discovered at the scene, including a driver's license, credit cards, and a social security card bearing Mitchell Dale Staling's identification, Montezuma County Coroner George Devers declared that he is 99% certain the remains are those of Staling. In order to study the remains and look for any evidence of trauma or hints that could shed light on Sterling's unusual passing, Devers said he will meet with a forensic anthropologist. Furthermore, he added that as of late September, there was no suspicion of foul play and that he had not been attacked by an animal. Devers stated that unless Staling had overt symptoms of trauma, which he did not, it was probably difficult to ascertain the cause of his passing because the remains were merely bones. At the time of the finding, it was uncertain whether a DNA test could be performed. Many of the bones found at the scene were bleached, and in order to extract DNA from a sample, the bones must maintain some moisture. According to Devers, if a DNA test is feasible, the findings would not be available for around a year. He said that it is thought that Dale passed away in the bottom of a canyon where his remains were discovered by a hiker in a public area. Initially, the case appears to be simple. Another instance of an outdoor mishap. Heat, cliffs, and rocks can all be fatal. After 7 years, Dale Staling's family seemed to have found closure. According to his wife, Dale was directionally challenged, which means he had trouble keeping track of his whereabouts. This, along with the heat's effect, makes this the most likely cause of his passing. He may have accidentally veered off course after being misled by a sign directing to the Chapin Mesa Archaeological Museum. When lost, it's simple to panic and go in the wrong direction, which can bring you into further danger. Still unanswered are the circumstances surrounding his passing and disappearance. Over the course of 2 weeks, a comprehensive search was conducted for Dale. There were 2 dog teams, rope teams that rappelled off cliffs, helicopter surveillance, and 60 searchers in total. Nevertheless, he went unnoticed, and it took 7 years for an unidentified tipper to find his bones. Despite the ideal weather for scent detection, the sniffer dogs were unable to detect any scent. In addition, Mesa Verde Park is not too large, and the well-liked walk to the Spruce Tree House ruin is not too difficult. Hikers who have gone before say it's difficult to stray off the path. It's a rough place, of course, and Dale vanished in the heat. Probably just a case of bad luck missing him. It was quite an accomplishment for a man of Dale's age to find himself 4 miles from his last known location without any food or water, but it was not unfeasible in a survival scenario. The mystery of Barbara Bolik. Back on July 18, 2007, Barbara Bolik left for a quick walk in the Bitterroot Mountains, west of Victor, Montana, near the Bear Creek Overlook. Jim Ramaker, a guest from California, was with her, and neither of them realized that this walk would lead them into an incomprehensible mystery. Around 11:30 in the morning, Jim stopped to admire the breathtaking vistas. Barbara was merely a stone's throw away, at around 20 or 30 feet, but when Jim turned around in less than a minute, she had disappeared. As a seasoned hiker who knew the area well, Barbara had made this trail her own numerous times. She always carried a black day pack that contained a magnum pistol as a precaution. Following a thorough search, neither Barbara nor her possessions were ever located. Not even scent dogs, who are usually so dependable, was able to find her. Chris Hoffman, the sheriff for Ravalli County, was left perplexed and called Barbara Bolik's disappearance a mystery. The mountains, the forests, and the route all appeared to be plotting silently and guarding their secrets. Following his 17-year career at J.P. Morgan Chase, Carl Bolik retired in 2001 and moved to Corvallis, Montana, with his 55-year-old wife, Barbara Assunta. Carl had overseen the company's global security operations as assistant director. Although Barbara had never lived in Montana, he had grown up there. But she was an avid hiker and an innate athlete, so she quickly took to her new surroundings, regularly going on lengthy climbs in the neighboring Bitterroot Valley and running almost every day. Carl had stopped accompanying Barbara when he suffered a heart attack, but she still enjoyed showing guests the sights by taking them on treks. However, Donna discovered she was hungover from the alcoholic cocktails they had consumed the previous evening and thought it would not be a good idea for her to go trekking when she woke up that morning. Nevertheless, Jim and Barbara were determined to go. So about 9:30 or 10 in the morning, Barbara informed Carl that she would be accompanying Jim to the overlook and that they would return for lunch. Carl worked on a construction project during the morning while the two went hiking. Carl didn't see his wife again after that. Barbara wore spectacles, weighed 115 pounds, and was 5 feet tall. She was wearing tan shorts and a pastel-coloured shirt that day. Donna began to worry about Barbara and Jim's disappearance around midday, but Carl told her that his wife was an experienced hiker who was familiar with the area, so she didn't need to worry. He was sure they will probably return very soon. He also informed Donna that Barbara was a very wary person who usually carried a backpack with food, water, and a magnum handgun to protect herself from moose, bears, mountain lions, and rattlesnakes. However, Barbara and Jim had still not arrived by early afternoon, so Donna requested Carl to give them a call. The phone rang at about 2 in the afternoon, just as he was about to make a call. Carl remarked that it was a Forest Service law enforcement officer. Carl quickly travelled to the area of the Bear Creek Overlook Trail after learning that Jim had reported Barbara missing in the hopes that his wife would have been found by the time he arrived. However, she had vanished from sight. According to Jim Ramaker, they hiked all the way to Bear Creek Overlook and took a meal break. They had spent around 30 minutes chatting with 2 young lads they had met on the route. At approximately 11:30 in the morning, Jim and Barbara set out to return to the trailhead, and Jim paused to take in the scenery. He claimed that he only engaged in this activity for 45 seconds at most, before turning around and discovering that Barbara, who had been 20 or 30 feet ahead of him at the time, had disappeared. Jim called out Barbara's name and searched the area for her. However, Barbara and her rucksack were nowhere to be found. She had disappeared without a trace. It was peculiar because the Bear Creek Overlook route was surrounded by a lot of loose shale rock, which would have made it challenging to walk around silently. Jim should have heard anything, like a scream or a cry for assistance, if she had fallen over the overlook. The road leading to the trailhead was closed for maintenance that day, so he gave up looking and went back to the trailhead, where he discovered construction workers. Jim inquired as to whether they had seen Barbara and gave a brief description of her, but they hadn't. However, they did remember seeing 2 young men pull off the route earlier, one with a black and white dog. Not long after, Jim reported Barbara missing. On July 18th, Carl remained at Bear Creek Overlook until midnight, but search parties advised him to go home and get some rest. He came back the next day with neighbors and friends. Along with search dogs and planes employing infrared and thermal imaging, many ground search and rescue teams thoroughly examined the region. However, neither Barbara nor her backpack were discovered, and the dogs were unable to detect her smell. Following a rigorous 2-week search and investigation, Barbara Bolik's disappearance was declared a mystery by Ravalli County Sheriff Chris Hoffman, who also stated at the time that they were perplexed. They stated that they had thoroughly searched the area around the disappearance. Not even a trace has been discovered. If at all possible, we would like to confirm that Bolik was indeed present on the mountain that day. When Jim informed the county sheriff about the 2 individuals they had spoken to while out on the trail, the police made an effort to find them and even put up a $10,000 prize. Accompanying the males were a black mixed-breed dog with white markings and floppy ears, who looked to be in their early 20s. One was described as having black hair and dark skin, while the other one had reddish-brown hair with a medium complexion. Both males had an athletic frame and were well-groomed. They might have been the owners of an older, light-colored Chevrolet SUV bearing license plates from Missoula County, Montana, but they were nowhere to be seen. There wasn't much publicity around Barbara's vanishing, so it's possible that they were unaware of her disappearance and chose not to notify the police. The males were confirmed to be on the trail by further witnesses, who included the construction team. Jim must have heard nothing if Barbara had strayed off the track or tumbled off the cliff. It has also been proposed that Barbara may not have had time to cry out after her unexpected fall. She was particularly cautious near heights, though, due to her dread of them. It didn't seem likely that she would stumble by accident because this was her favorite trail, and she knew it quite well. After several hours of both official and informal searching, scent dogs were used, but neither her remains nor her pack have ever been located. It's possible that she became stuck in a cave or crack if she fell suddenly, but it seems strange that no one has ever found her. The mysterious disappearance of Michelle Vanck. Michelle Ray Vanck, a mother of 4 who is 35 years old, attempted her first ascent of one of the well-known Colorado 14ers on September 24, 2005. She decided for Mount of the Holy Cross, a 14,000-foot walk that is considered to be somewhat challenging. Being a triathlon and marathoner, she was in excellent physical form, so she felt confident about climbing it. That was the last time she or her belongings were ever seen by the conclusion of that day. Michelle goes missing on the Mount of the Holy Cross several years later, and no leads have shown up. The day before the journey to Mount of the Holy Cross, Michelle and her husband Ben went to Gart Sports and Costco to get additional hiking gear since they were so eager. Eric Sawyer, a friend of Michelle's who had walked 38 14ers, was with her. Michelle left all of the preparation to Sawyer as they had been planning to trek one of Colorado's 14ers for over a year. Around 6:30 in the morning, Michelle and Eric started their walk together. Michelle had on a camelback backpack, hiking poles, a hat, blue and white mittens, and a lightweight blue ski jacket with white stripes on the sleeves and pants. She was 5'8" and weighed 145 pounds. She had blonde hair and blue eyes. Remarkably, neither of them had a map, compass, GPS, or personal locating beacon with them. They were inviting trouble if something went wrong. The walk soon began to take a turn for the worst. They left Half Moon Campground at 6:30 in the morning with the intention of approaching Holy Cross from the north by the North Ridge Trail or Half Moon, but Michelle was complaining of a headache. This might have been an indication of severe altitude sickness. Sawyer reported to the authorities following the subsequent events that Michelle was moving slowly but wasn't obviously experiencing any issues. Park personnel were apparently replacing the sign designating the more difficult Halo route and the easier North Ridge route. When Sawyer looked at his map near the way to the 13,000-foot-plus Notch Mountain, he realized they were on the incorrect trail. The two were traveling the 9-mile winding Halo Ridge path, which reaches Holy Cross from the southwest. Due to its length, elevation gain above tree line, and somewhat uneven final few miles, hiking the Halo route can take up to 2 days. It is advised that only very experienced travelers use this trail. It was also not long before they discovered that Eric had inadvertently left their food and water purifier in the car. Sadly, cutting down on the hike's length on Halo Ridge would have required either extremely steep off-route climbing or hiking a shorter distance. Despite being running late, Sawyer persisted, eventually informing the authorities that if they went back to search for Half Moon Trail, they would not have enough time to reach the top. A horrible move in retrospect. They soon got to a cottage where they paused for 10 or 15 minutes to get out of the wind and cold. Sawyer had to assist Michelle in keeping up with him at all times, since she could lag behind him by up to 60 feet in order to prevent them from becoming any more behind schedule. Michelle was slowing down considerably by the time she and Eric topped Notch Mountain on their trip to Holy Cross. Michelle and Eric had run out of water entirely by 1:25 in the afternoon. Michelle decided she couldn't complete the hike to the top of Mount Holy Cross. Though Eric seemed reluctant, she told him to hike the remaining 500 feet to the peak on his own. For an easier descent, he directed Michelle to go across a region covered in large stones, which he estimated to be about 600 feet, to the North Ridge route. Had Michelle not begun walking towards the route, it would have taken an additional 45 minutes to descend the mountain. Eric called his wife to let her know they would be late after racing to the summit and arriving at 1:42 in the afternoon. According to witnesses Bill and Julia Taylor, he was only there for perhaps 5 minutes. Julia Taylor said that he just seemed to be rushed because he had to get back to his hiking partner. After exchanging the customary greetings and taking photos of one another, Sawyer proceeded towards Michelle along the North Ridge route. Soon after, they heard Sawyer crying what they initially mistook for cries for help. Instead, it was Michelle. Michelle was nowhere to be seen when Sawyer arrived at the location on the North Ridge route where she was supposed to be waiting for him. Seeking Michelle, he followed the trail back towards Half Moon Camp, but to no effect. After that, he filed a missing persons report. That night, a small group of rescuers set out to find Michelle. Rescuers surmised she had headed towards the North Ridge and that she may have fallen off the ridgeline into the Cross Creek drainage, where big pine trees may have obscured the view for search helicopters. Rescuers stated that it would be too challenging to examine the area's steep forested cliffs without a map indicating where they should search. The next day, September 25, 2005, a massive search and rescue operation was launched under the direction of the Vail Mountain Search and Rescue Team. Approximately 700 searchers scoured the area over the course of the following week. It was Colorado's biggest ever search operation. Although dogs were utilized, the search was complicated by a deluge of rain. The head of the Vail Search and Rescue Team, Tim Cochran, couldn't understand what happened. A shotgun was discovered in a duffel bag on the mountain on Wednesday, September 26th, 100 yards past the Cross Creek trailhead, and there were reports of a strange individual in the area, so the possibility of foul play was investigated. Brenda Parks, a rescuer, and her companion encountered a man who avoided eye contact and covered his face with a tree. When they intended to question him, he fled by running down the hill. A dog team saw what looked to be blood in the snow later that day. Due to inclement weather, teams were unable to follow up on the blood, and no footprints were discovered. A suspicious individual inside a yellow tent with a light on was confronted by rescuers. The person would not answer or unzip the tent. Subsequently, the man who they thought was the person in the tent was discovered by rescuers and deputies going down the route. The man was nudged by deputies and grudgingly admitted that his name was Peter Martin. He admitted to having no identification and gave hazy details about his residence to the deputies. Sadly, there was never more research done on him. Michelle was an exceptional athlete who excelled in track and field, cross-country running, endurance racing, and distance running. She was also in excellent shape. She had participated in triathlons and marathons before this walk. Would someone in such amazing shape be breathing heavily and running behind schedule unless she had succumbed to altitude sickness? According to some accounts, it seemed like Eric was infatuated with her. Even though Michelle had admitted to her friends that he was strange and fixated on her, she was still very much determined to go up the mountain. Sawyer was quite jealous of her husband as well, but their bond was very strong. Eric was present for Michelle's funeral, where she was eventually pronounced legally deceased. He was described as fidgety, nervous, pale as a ghost, and with very shifty eyes, although he was believed to have spoken to no one. The mystery of Dr. McGrogan. After working in Wisconsin, Dr. McGrogan returned to Indiana to work in the emergency department of St. Joseph Regional Medical Center in Mishawaka. Jim set off at approximately 8:30 in the morning on March 14, 2014, with 3 trekking companions to complete the 9-mile trek to the Eisman Hut and Camp Hale. The camp is made up of several huts tucked away in the mountains that are meant to act as hikers' or campers' temporary homes. Originally constructed as a mountain warfare training ground and home to the 10th Mountain Division, the property dates back to the 1940s. The group broke for a rest at around 10 in the morning, when they were still around 5 miles from the hut. Jim made the decision to walk ahead of the group, and his friends anticipated that they would catch up with him along the way. Jim disappeared after hiking on his own and leaving the others behind. It was late afternoon on March 14th when the remaining members of the gang arrived at the Eisman Hut, and McGrogan was nowhere to be found. He vanished from view forever. The hikers informed the Vail Department of Public Safety and the Eagle Valley Sheriff's Department by 5:30 in the afternoon. Over a region of 18 square miles, a rescue operation was launched. The authorities were not too concerned because McGrogan had plenty of supplies, including food, water, and warm clothes. In addition, he was using the boots that came with the snowboard and was carrying a split snowboard, a snowboard that splits lengthwise, as well as skins and other gear from Confluence Kayaks in Denver. McGrogan's cell phone rang once the day he vanished, but it stopped working after that. Teams of searchers using snowmobiles, foot patrols, and 3 helicopters from the National Guard's high-altitude aviation training site located in neighboring Gypsum, Colorado, combed the area over the course of the following 3 days. However, on Tuesday, March 18th, inclement weather compelled the search to be halted. Together, crews had put about 1,000 hours looking for McGrogan. Despite snow in the region, which would have indicated if someone was hiking or skiing off-path, a 5-day search turned up no signs of him. 20 days later, on April 3, 2014, a group of backcountry skiers discovered McGrogan's body approximately 4.5 kilometers from the path, close to the Booth Falls region and east of the Eisman Hut. An icefall, or frozen waterfall that cascades down a steep slope, is what the reporting party described to authorities as having happened beneath Booth Falls, while he and 2 other people were skiing in the area. The body was found lying on top of an ice sheet in the fall below Booth Falls. He was discovered without a coat, gloves, or, most oddly, boots. He was only wearing his helmet. His cell phone was found in his backpack, and there seemed to be active cellular reception here. Although Jim's boots were never found, his snowboard was discovered close by. According to Eagle County Coroner Cara Bettis, James McGrogan passed away on April 7, 2014, due to a variety of injuries, including a broken femur, injuries to his left side of the chest, and head trauma, according to Eagle County Coroner Cara Bettis. He was declared deceased.